Good morning. I'm going to call to order the Arapahoe County Board of County Commissioners public meeting for November 13th, 2018. To my left is Ron Carl, the county attorney. To my far right is Jolene Sanchez, the assistant clerk to the board. Ms. Sanchez, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jackson? Here. Commissioner Boland?
Here.
Commissioner Sharp?
Here.
Commissioner Conti?
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Baker?
Here. Commissioner Jackson, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Carl, are there any modifications to the agenda this morning?
There are no modifications.
With no modifications, I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Sharp, seconded by Commissioner Holden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? Seeing none, that motion carries. This is the time that we've set aside for citizens to address the Board of County Commissioners on any non-agenda items. If you're here to speak about anything that's coming up in the public meeting, then hang tight. This is for anybody that has something not related to anything that's currently on the agenda. There's a 3-minute time limit per person, and you'll need to watch the yellow light that will come on when you have 30 seconds left, and the red light means that you've reached your 3-minute limit. Good morning, Ms. Fay.
Morning, Commissioners. Martha Lovato, BOCC Interim Manager. Reading into the record on behalf of J.M. Fay, 2575 South Syracuse Way, Denver, Colorado, 80231. Commissioners, we would greatly appreciate you not doing another Jerry Rhodes and CFPD and passing the buck to clean up the mess this county and sheriff's department has caused us due to their picking and choosing if and when laws are enforced and on who. There is no consistent policy at all with regards to even disabled parking spaces, so our sheriff's department had the nerve to help tow our car with a legal placard visible from a disabled space simply because it's a reserved spot through 18 days, though 18 days earlier, another deputy said Colorado allows no disabled parking spaces to be reserved in Colorado. Meanwhile, disabled parking signs are being altered, and per the Sheriff's Department, this is a civil matter. A civil matter when you help tow the car of someone who is seriously ill, following the law, and still gets their car towed. We further noticed none of the 5 of you or the Sheriff's Department cared one iota that we got our car back. That car, which took us 2.5 years to afford, and getting seriously ill, and if we hadn't been lent the money from a lady we met in Holly Hills, would have cost us the car with us going every 3 weeks to Amschutz for a treatment. That does not speak well for any of you. We expect this issue, and the rest of the 22 years and still going on to be settled ASAP and before the sheriff leaves office. Second issue, you may have forgotten, but we have not. The library issue also needs to be addressed. Third issue, can someone please tell us why we have clocks on the wall with the wrong time? You're going to tell us no one can fix this. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, JM. Are there any other citizens that would like to address the board on any non-agenda items? Good morning. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Nita Regan. I live at 2191 South Dallas Street in Arapahoe County. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Several of us are here today from the Huntington Estates neighborhood to briefly address something that's not on your agenda for this morning, but which we know you'll be discussing this afternoon in your working session. And that is the issue of the Waffle House, which on October 16th was unanimously rejected by the Planning Commission for a proposal to put a 24-hour establishment next to our neighborhood. On October 16th, the Planning Commission heard from dozens of residents that are in opposition to any 24-hour establishment, not just to the Waffle House, because we believe that matter to have been put to rest 10 years ago in the 2009 development of Prospect Village, where we were specifically promised by the same attorney, Michael Sheldon, you'll see that this afternoon, that no 24-hour establishments would be permitted. We urge you to reject a future hearing on this issue because it would set a precedent that basically negates the existence of the Planning Commission in the first place. 2 hours of testimony and overwhelming evidence presented by residents and other concerned citizens would have effectively been useless if you grant another hearing to these people who have been suspiciously silent about their plans to attempt this again and sought no input from residents who would be greatly and adversely affected. If you allow another hearing on this, then you really would need to allow another hearing on any objection that comes forth from the Planning Commission decisions in the future. We urge you to reject this.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Ms. Reagan. Other citizens that have non-agenda items? Okay. No problem. So we're moving on to approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes this morning. The first one is from October 9th, 2018, and we had a full board at that time.
Mr. Chair, I'd motion approval. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Conti, seconded by Commissioner Holland. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. The next set of minutes that we have are from October, let me get to the right place here, 16th. And Commissioner Holland, you were absent and excused. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Remove approval. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Sharp, seconded by Commissioner Conti. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries. Correct. Thank you. The next, let's move on here, to the consent agenda. Are there any questions about any of the items on the consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda. Motion made by Commissioner Holland, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Any abstentions or objections? So we're moving on to our general business items. We do have a public hearing this morning. Public hearing on P17-018. And I'm going to pronounce this phonetically. AVER on the Highline Specific Development Plan. Our presenter will be Molly Orkild Larson, Senior Planner with Public Works and Development. And our attorney on this item is Senior Assistant County Attorney Bob Hill. Mr. Hill, would you please set the foundation for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This specific development plan application has been noticed by mailing, posting the property, and publication in the Villager newspaper. The board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Ms. Orkild Larson.
Good morning. Molly Orkild Larson, Senior Planner with the Public Works Department. What's before you is a specific development plan for 56 townhome development situated between the Highland Canal and South Quebec Way and is adjacent to the South Quebec Way trailhead. This application proposes to rezone the property from R1 to PUD in order to develop the property as multifamily. The proposed development is located within the 4 square mile area and is subject to the 4 square mile sub-area plan. The sub-area plan identifies the land use allowed on the property as multifamily with a density of 13 to 25 dwelling units per acre. This application is proposing a density of 13.58 DUs per acre, thus meeting the density requirements. Originally, the applicant did come in with buildings that were of average heights greater than 45 feet. The developer has modified these building heights they're now 40 feet or less. The applicant has worked pretty hard in meeting that criteria and has achieved this through reducing the slope of the roofs on these units. This was before the Planning Commission in September, and some of the concerns that were brought up ranged in compatibility, density, traffic, and also parking. And on page 2 of your board summary report, I do go through that was what was discussed. The Planning Commission did approve the application 7-0 with conditions. Staff is recommending approval based on the findings in the staff report. And the applicant is here today with a PowerPoint presentation, and I think it might take a few minutes for him to set up. I'll sit down unless you have some questions for me.
We have some questions for you, I'm sure. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few clarifications for those of us who aren't really technically savvy and so on. There was a discussion about the right-of-way and some variances. Could you kind of walk me through what that discussion was about? Apparently it's not a problem, but I just didn't quite understand what the issues were.
I will turn that over to Chuck Haskins, who can address that.
Thank you.
And I believe it would be fine for the applicant to start setting up if you can do that. If Chuck comes forward as well, if that's something that you can manage simultaneously. Okay.
Good morning, Board.
Mr. Haskins.
Chuck Haskins, Engineering Services Division. Yeah, the variance had to do with the width of the right-of-way. Our standard cross-section for a minor collector is 76 feet, and that accommodates 2 lanes, sidewalk, a landscaping strip. So they demonstrated that they can achieve all of that within the existing 60 feet of right-of-way. And the reason that made sense to the TRC is that's all we have to the north and to the south. So it didn't really make a lot of sense to expand the right-of-way by 8 feet along the east side. So we're able to put in all the improvements, but there is an attached sidewalk, an 8-foot attached sidewalk, and landscaping will be on the back side of that. So TRC thought the request made sense. The other thing it's probably come up today is we do have a project underway to widen that road, improve that road, and the developer will be improving their frontage, and we'll be working with them and hopefully with their contractor on making the improvements beyond their scope. So in case that comes up, there is a project underway that we are going to improve Quebec Way. Okay?
Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know if this is for you or for Molly, but there were a couple of issues around, and I understand there's not going to be a major traffic impact there, but that the turn in and the access, if you will, to the development is that also meets our specifications and that there's adequate room for our fire trucks and police response and so on. So that's something that's always an issue. So I just want to double check and make sure all of that is in order as well.
The road cross section meets our standards. The turning volumes were lower than required to put in a left turn lane.
Okay.
So we expect it to operate adequately. And I don't know about any on-site fire or anything issues. You might want to talk with Molly about that.
Just to double check and make sure that it's all appropriate.
Molly O'Kill Larson. The fire did review the plan set, and they had no problems. They approved it.
Okay. I think there were a citizen comment or two wondering about that, so I wanted to make sure. Okay, for now, I think that's all. Thank you.
Turn it over to the applicant.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Unless there are other questions for staff. Applicants, please come forward. And if you'll state your name and address for the record, please, when you get set up.
Didn't take long.
Not bad.
I'm telling you.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Warren James. I'm with Riva Development Partners. I'm a principal, and our address is 116 West Illinois Street, Chicago, Illinois.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to present a vary on the High Line. I'm sure that that's going to be a problem going forward, right? Pronunciation. In any event, with me this morning is my business partner, Matt Nix. Also with me is Dan Rodriguez, our civil engineer, and Chris McGranahan, the traffic consultant. So if you have any questions relating to the engineering or the traffic, they will be able to answer those. Riva Development Partners, myself, I've been in the business for 31 years, grew up in the real estate development and building business, and my business partner, Matt Nix, has got over 25 years experience, so we come to you very well experienced. We formed Riva Development approximately 6 years ago to undertake multifamily development. Both of us have varying backgrounds that help us put our combined expertise. In the past several years, we've developed the Oaks of Vernon Hills, a 336-unit development in Vernon Hills, Illinois, Northgate Crossing, 300-unit development in Wheeling, Illinois, Orland Park Crossing, 231 units in Orland Park, Illinois, and Deer Park Crossing, 236 units. So you see we're accustomed to doing larger scale development activity, very, very facile in all of these areas. When we came to Denver, we did so specifically to diversify geographically, also noting the development trends. And you'll note that the 56-unit development that we're undertaking here is somewhat smaller than our typical. That's because our goal is to hold on to this long term. We're making an investment for personal resources in the community and expect to be good members of the community for many years to come. The site is located 1860 to 1890 South Quebec Way, a little bit more than a half-mile north of the intersection of Iliff and Yosemite. Yosemite becomes South Quebec Way as you travel north. A little closer up context, one of the most compelling features is the proximity to the Highline Canal Trail. The site is occupied by three existing single-family homes that were built many, many decades ago. They've fallen into disrepair. I will show you some existing conditions. That's looking from the Highline Canal Trail down west towards South Quebec Way. There are some pictures of the existing single-family homes. The site, as Molly mentioned, is located within this 4 square mile sub-area plan, and it is designated for multifamily. The density allowed within the 4 square mile plan or called out is at a low end of 13 units per acre at a high end of 25 units per acre. We are proposing a density of 13.59 units per acre, so at the low end of the prescribed density scale. Looking at the surrounding areas, there's definitely a clear distinction to properties to the west of the Highline Canal and to the east. To the west, it's preponderantly multifamily properties. Looking graphically at a depiction of the density of the adjacent properties, you can see that the proposed area on the Highline at 13.59 units to the acre is less than the surrounding communities. The specific plan for Bavaria on the Highline, in terms of its format, is similar to some of the structures and the homes that have been developed further to the north on the Highline. One of the most distinctive characteristics of this area is the grade change from South Quebec Way up to the Highline Canal Trail. From our entrance here up to the High Line, there's a grade change of 32 feet. So it presents a significant challenge in designing a community that meets the Colorado Title IX accessibility standards. Even though these are 3-story townhomes with parking on the lower level, living on the middle level, and sleeping on the 3rd level, we still need to, under the law, provide visitability to 24 of the 56 units. So we've achieved that by setting the homes into the grade such that the parking level if you follow the cursor on the screen, the parking level in these buildings and all the ones that back up to the Highline Canal is embedded into the terrain. So that's effectively a basement level, even though the garage is exposed. The primary living level, which is on the 2nd floor, that would be at grade as it approaches the High Line. But even that, because of the rising terrain, every one of the living levels is still below the level of the High Line. So the Highline Canal Trail is from a few feet above to 6 or 7 feet above the primary living level in each of these. And that has, for the community benefit, that provides the appearance of a 2-story or even a 1.5 story exposure when looking at this from the High Line. From a planning and an engineering standpoint, it makes it very complicated to meet all the grades. How we achieve that visitability is on the south end. We propose a sidewalk that meets the ADA requirements that wraps around the backs of all of these proposed homes on the Highline Canal, and that allows somebody in a wheelchair to access the primary living level without any conflicts. The character of the buildings, as seen from, maybe I should go back and note one thing. One of the distinctions of what we're proposing to what we've seen in the immediate adjacent areas, we're trying not to show garage doors to the street. We'd much prefer to present a front door architecture as you drive by on South Quebec Way. We think it's more inviting, more compelling, a little friendlier than seeing the garage door. So we've created this motor court area for the buildings that allow the garage entrance to be on the backside for the 2 buildings that face South Quebec Way. Then the primary entrance will be here, just past the corner, and the grade starts rising as you go up. This building steps uphill, then you're rising all the way to this point, and then the grade starts to come back down. So the garages are hidden discreetly in this motor court until you get back up on the high side, and there's simply no way we could do it here. So we've got front doors next to the garage doors for primary access to the homes for those fronting the High Line. Character of the building elevations. These colors show up a little bit dark on this particular computer rendering, but you can see that we've used a combination of stone and cement fiber siding and a variety of colors to break up the elevations and create visual interest. This elevation is what you would see in a typical 5-unit building along the Highline Canal Trail. As I mentioned, we're setting the buildings into the grade so you can see how from the backside, from the Highline Canal Trail side, you'd see a much smaller building profile, whereas the entry door and the garage doors on the lower level. Building 1 fronts South Quebec Way. So as I noted earlier, the front doors of all of these units faces South Quebec Way and creates a visually appealing elevation. We've combined an actual photograph with some computer-generated imagery to illustrate how these buildings would relate to the Highline Canal Trail. You can see the relationship of the adjacent single-family homes. I should note that the tableland on Uinta Way is approximately 50 feet higher than South Quebec Way. So it's 32 feet from South Quebec Way to the High Line. It's another 20 feet or so from the High Line up to the tableland. So the residents up here are looking right over the top. They probably won't even, they'll see rooftops at most, but there's a significant tree canopy, so they're really looking mostly into the trees. This depiction shows how these buildings are set into the grade so that the appearances of a two-story building from the Highline Canal Trail. This is what the site looks like today, and this is what it would look like with the units constructed.
Do that one more time.
So you can see the existing single-family homes and the existing tree cover. Here's a little shed. Here's one of the homes. There's another home in here and another home in here. And this area on the right side of the screen is the existing trailhead access point. So as I toggle, you can see the relationship. So the primary entrance is here off of South Quebec Way, and the road rises. One of the notable features, one of the community features, is a barbecue area and a fire pit at this node. The roadway wraps around these buildings and then comes back to the second entrance here further north on South Quebec Way. Another view looking towards the city, looking to the northwest. Here you can clearly see the trailhead access, and we are proposing a connection point through the existing fence here. So we'll make a pathway that allows our residents to walk through a gate and connect directly to the existing South Quebec Way trailhead access to the Highline Canal Trail. And this is a rendering. Again, we've stripped out all the landscaping so you can see how the buildings would relate. And again, this illustrates how that ADA accessible route is constructed. We start here and it gradually raises all the way and up to the high point here, and then it begins going back down this point, allowing visitors to enter the primary living level. I should note that visitors will also be able to enter directly into the primary living level of these homes here. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Nix, who's going to explain to you the resident profile and a little bit more about the homes that we're proposing. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Matt Nix, Principal at Reba Development Partners. Just to talk a little bit about the product. We're really responding to, changing trends in the marketplace, responses to really to rental housing living. And I've shown here on the screen a few of the target demographics: baby boomers, empty nesters really seeking to downsize out of single families. This is it's been a growing trend, and it's been an underserved market. People that kids have grown up, they want to stay connected in the area, and they're just really limited opportunities. And making a transition into a multi-story single level living is a little bit tougher for them. So the rental townhome is an ideal fit to transition with all the furniture and things. You can transition. There's a 2-car garage, and we found that it's been very inviting. But the fact that it's a rental option really gives the downsizing empty nester the flexibility to, for a year or two, oftentimes it turns into a longer period of time, but it just gives them the flexibility to make their next move. Another trend we're seeing is maturing millennials. We've all seen lots of growth in the higher density multifamily developments downtown, but we're finding that when the millennials, when the girlfriend or boyfriend becomes husband or wife, the dog becomes the first child, they're making a lateral move in terms of what it costs them, but they're opting for more space. They're opting for the kind of the flexibility and the lifestyle of having an attached single family. And then finally, young families. We've seen this trend going on for a number of years, delaying home ownership, but looking to move, to set down roots as their family grows. And with a rental townhome, it's a wonderful opportunity for them to come into the community and to lay down roots. So that's what we're trying to respond to. These are just some images of of the product that we're talking about. This is a project that we're building in Chicago, as you can see, what we'd refer to as condo or for sale quality interior finishes. The architecture, different for its location, but really the style and the quality is indicative of what we plan to do here. And as Warren talked about, this is a three-story townhome with the garage and a small den area at grade, and really the primary living area is on the second floor with the bedrooms on the third floor. We orient the master to look forward at the views, and the secondary or the second and third bedroom on the motor court. We also have a 2-bedroom option just to add more flexibility. So we've got a 2-bedroom that's about 1,500 square feet, and the 3-bedroom all the way up to 2,100 square feet. Again, what drew us here was the connectivity to this wonderful Highline Canal Trail. In addition, we really want to take advantage of outdoor amenity areas where we'll have a gathering area in the community. We'll have a fire pit, barbecue area, and really just to create an attractive living environment. And as I said, really, when we came into the Denver market, we were trying to identify townhome opportunities. When we found this location on the Highline, it really brought memories of similar situations in Chicago. We've got the wonderful Illinois Prairie Path and the recently built 606 Trail, which we are finding again and again the success of residential that has this connectivity to take advantage of the trails, biking, riding, jogging, lends itself to long-term success in the community. So just to recap the benefits, we're following the 4 square mile plan and have tried to conform to the objectives outlined in the plan. We believe it's a thoughtful design addressing the challenging topography and the sensitivity to the views on the Highline. We'll be burying power lines and extending the pedestrian sidewalk along South Quebec, the improvements we talked about. Economic benefits in terms of impact fees and real estate taxes are included in the report, and ultimately providing new housing options for a wide range of future residents, which really contributes just to the robust community that we hope to build. So with that, we're available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I appreciated your presentation, and I was just in that area just about 2 weeks ago, so quite familiar with it. You've answered a number of my questions, but there's a comment here from the Highline Conservancy that I'm wondering, you've talked a couple of times about the connection with the trail there, the trailhead, and it is a natural for sure, but it sounds like Denver Water Board and Open Spaces Division do not want a direct trail connection due to maintenance and safety or liability issues. Have you addressed that, and have you worked that out with those entities?
We had multiple meetings with Highline Conservancy, really respected group, and they're trying to promote the connectivity. We had proposed a direct connection from our property to the Highline that met with some objection from Denver Water. So that's when we came back to the proposed connection from our property to the existing trailhead access. So that's why we've got it on the south end, and that seems to address everybody's concerns.
Okay, very good. And the other thing was somewhere in here, I believe the Conservancy mentioned something about a buffer.
They're still developing their plant palette and landscape guidelines. We would welcome the opportunities to supplement the landscaping on the Denver water side of the property line. I think they advocate that too. That's going to take some further work between us, but we are on the same page. We'd like to enhance that. Presently, our landscape plan shows for landscaping on our side of the property line. So they're asking, could we embellish upon that and add landscaping on the other side? So that's something that can be worked through in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yeah, I just had a question about the Highline Canal and water. You know, if the Highline Canal, if we had flooding, what would that do? Because you're kind of lower, the garages are lower. what have you done about that, and what have you done to prevent?
I'll speak as a layperson, though I have an engineering background. Our PE is over there, but just to say that we've gone through extensive planning to make sure that any grading and drainage concerns have been resolved. And Dan's here to address.
If you'll state your full name for the record and address.
Dan Rodriguez, 999 South Logan, Denver 80229. With the part of the design, so the actual Highline Canal is located to the north of the trail, and that's where it typically conveys most of the lower storm events. For the larger storm events like the 100-year storm, we have, as part of our storm sewer design on the site, we have delineated the areas that will drain onto the site, and for the buildings along the north property line, we have swales and storm sewer infrastructure in between the buildings, and we're kind of creating a little swale around the buildings to route the water down south to the pavement, into the storm sewer system, and into the on-site detention pond.
Okay. So you're confident that'll address 100-year flood?
For the 100-year storm, which is what we are to design for the Arapahoe County Code, we are confident.
Okay. And I just had one sort of curiosity. It's not an engineering question, but for you all as the investors. Just curious to know why you made the decision to make these rental versus for sale properties. Just curious.
Couple of reasons. First, the trend moving towards more rental than home ownership. Excuse me. We've noted the enormous influx of millennials, and with so many people moving to Denver and the trend of renting versus buying, we think that we're trying to anticipate the demand. We also note that there's been a dearth of first-time homeowner product available, and the kind of the decline in the condo production as well. So we think that this will fill that need, and it's something that, again, we're in the business of multifamily. We think it's a very prudent and long-term investment, and why we're making the commitment.
Are you seeing the same thing in other markets that you're in Chicago and other areas?
Chicago doesn't enjoy the same population growth that Colorado does, which is part of the reason why we're here. We're still active in Chicago, but the underlying growth potential for Colorado exceeds that of Illinois.
I'd just like to see home ownership. I think we've got a lot of apartments and
we'll note that
kind of
this
thing.
is
So I'm just that's just a
understood.
Hopefully, we have more home ownership opportunities for people as well as rental. So
this is being built in such a way that it can be converted in the future to a resale product.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Conti.
Yes, just wondering, is the fact that there are adjoining walls between the units having a play in the concern of construction defect laws that are currently still in place in the state, having a concern making these continue to be rentals as opposed to ownership?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you say it again?
It is my understanding that many builders vacated the state when certain construction defect laws were impacted at the state level and said, we have built our last condominium in the state until those laws are repealed. Therefore, the only condominiums that we have seen largely have been $400,000 and up in order to absorb the higher rates of insurance and so forth from subcontractors that are desiring to work on those projects. And so I'm wondering if that is the reason that these having adjoining walls, are part of the reason that we are making them rental versus ownership.
That is certainly part of our consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Jackson.
I can't resist this one. I think you've answered it, but I learned a new word, so I want to use it here. It said the wastewater division of the city and county of Denver indicated they have received drainage complaints along Colorado Avenue through the Thalweg. That's my new word, Thalweg, from the upper basin. So that's a low part in the valley or something. I looked it up. But is that the question? When you answered Commissioner Sharp's question, is that what you were addressing? Was that concern about the drainage from?
No, those are separate questions. The drainage, the area you are mentioning in that comment is located further away from the site, and direct runoff from that area will not reach the site.
Okay, so that's not an issue.
They're separate concerns and discussions.
Okay, but this particular issue will not impact this development?
Correct.
A very? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. James, Mr. Nix, or Mr. Rodriguez? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just in case there happens to be questions concerning your presentation,
Leave it up.
if you could, and we're going to open it up for public comment, and if anyone wants to refer to maybe any of the diagrams or maps that you showed, that might be helpful in explaining their comments, if that's okay. Appreciate it. This is a public hearing. We did have 5 people sign up to talk. I'm going to open up public comment, and I will call the names, and then at the end I'll ask if anyone who arrived after the sign-in sheet was presented to me. Again, we allow 3 minutes for public comments. You'll need to keep your eye on the yellow light, which will go on at 30 seconds left in your comments, and then when the red light comes on, we ask you to wrap it up at that time. The first person who signed up was Nita Reagan. So if you'd come forward, please. Okay, understand. The next person I have that signed up to speak on this public hearing is Cindy Alm. Okay, thank you. Victoria Alvernon. Thank you very much. Number 4 was Amy Mullen? Millencypher. It is. Thank you. Welcome. And if you'd state your name and address for the record.
My name is Amy Millencypher. I live at 2087 South Xenia Way, Willows at Highline, which is catty corner from the proposed new development.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I would really like to have 30 minutes like the developer did. First of all, it would be really nice if we had this nice landscape, and it stayed a landscape, and it would be nice if Denver, Colorado would honor green belts again, like we used to. We are not Chicago, Illinois. We are Denver, Colorado. I am a 3rd-generation Coloradan. My grandfather was the commissioner of the PUC. My godfather was a councilman. My father was an architect and created the largest building downtown Denver when I was young, the Mountain Bell Building. He also created the Curtis Park Exchange and had to keep to historic standards in order to keep it in a historic landmark district, which we're seeing going away in Denver, Colorado. It breaks my heart. I also used to own a business at Lowry Town Center and had to let that go because I had greedy landlords and developers who didn't want to support small businesses. I have lived over at the Willows for 22 years. Southeast Denver, I grew up off of Evans and Monaco. Iliff was a dirt road when I was a little girl. I was born in 1965. Southeast Denver met its density and capacity 20 years or plus. There's crime has increased in our area. A person was killed in the middle of the day 1 block from my house last month. The design is completely inappropriate. First of all, when you have rentals, they're not taken care of as well as when you own a home. Yesterday, when I was driving to a doctor's appointment, I drove from my house on Evans down Quebec Way all the way to Quebec. And we have 5 single dwelling homes. That's it. We have multi-dwelling that is killing us in this area. We can't breathe. We've got crowded rat syndrome. I don't like that they want to chop down all the trees. I moved into the Willows 22 years ago. The Highline Canal is so packed that I won't even ride my bike on it or walk on it anymore. I don't know what's going to happen when they build these 56 units. The traffic, well, it needed to update Quebec Way for a while. I don't care if they're paying for it or helping it. It needed to be done a while ago. As a matter of fact, the house on the corner of Iliff and Yosemite has been building a fence that when I was on the board of directors of my HOA got stopped, and it hasn't been dealt with. We deal with having to try to turn left without getting hit all the time. Please fix that before you build more property. We still haven't even felt the impact from the new development on Iliff between Wabash and Yosemite. We haven't even felt the impact from the atrocity on Parker Road that's butted up against the Highline Canal. That hasn't even hit. I'm a Colorado native, and I'm being forced out of my own city and state. It's a disgrace, and I'm saddened. And I almost didn't come today because I don't feel that the government listens to the people. They only listen to the developers and the money in their coffers. I'm very disappointed. I say that respectfully. You know, my grandfather was the commissioner of the PUC, and I saw Mountain Bell and public service try to manipulate him all the time. But he had integrity.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Miller-Cipher. And so J.M. Fay also wanted to speak on this issue.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Good morning. Martha Lovato. I'm reading into the record on behalf of J.M. Fay, 2575 South Syracuse Way, Denver, Colorado, 80231. Commissioners, how many of you remember first starting out and not being able to afford a lot, using furniture, kitchen stuff, etc. you got from your parents or relatives to furnish your first home? Ours here in Glendale was $250 a month for a studio in 1988. Nowadays, you can't get much, especially in certain areas, for under $1,000, and that is probably low. You certainly can't afford a $1,000 apartment working at a 10 to 12 an hour job unless you have a roommate, one or more. This development is planned for 56 units, 44 3-bedroom, 12 2-bedrooms with 2 parking spaces each, but with them all rentals and all large units, size units, we can easily see 4 to 6 people in each unit, especially with the high-end prices. There is no additional parking here, but 27 guest spaces. You can't park on the street. The 83D is the only bus, and it doesn't run that frequently as it runs opposite the 83L, which runs a lot more. That means people are walking to Iliff and or Leedsdale to get the bus and or working from home. That is not realistic in most cases. This area is already jam-packed with apartments. Townhomes? Townhomes, a very few single family. We don't need more high-density development adding to the traffic, crime, etc. 112 cars plus added to a through street that locals use to get to our library, other parts of unincorporated or Havana. This is also planned right next to the Highline Canal, one of the most used paths in our area. Once you get on one high-density unit, you or future BOCC will not be able to resist adding more, though the plans do not allow for them. Due to the lack of parking, the added traffic, the proximity to the canal, we would ask that you override the proposed plans and leave this area as single family. Yes, contrary to what the proposed area plans call for, but we have seen so much development since this plan took effect that we and many others worked on, that we would say we don't need any more in this area right now, and with this being so close to one of our premier trails for walking, biking, etc. Our biggest issue is this 100% rentals and the lack of parking. We heard that the complex just built along Parker, forgot its name, was going to be converted to, but that hasn't happened yet. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. We appreciate it. Those were all of the people that had signed up. Are there any other citizens that would like to address the Board of County Commissioners on the issue of P17-018 Avere on the Highline Specific Development Plan? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for any commissioner comments or questions. Commissioner Conti.
A question for Molly, if she's available. Thank you, Molly. I'm just wondering, thank you for coming back up. Did the developer meet the open space requirements, or as opposed to that, pay the tax?
Cash in lieu you're talking
Cash in
about?
lieu, yes.
That would be figured out and applied at the plating stage, and that would be the next step with the administrative site plan.
So that's still to be determined?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Anybody?
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I just want to say that I am also a Colorado native and a little older than you are, and remember when it was a field past Potomac, and the city has changed tremendously, and I miss going downtown and wearing my little white gloves and that whole thing. The area has grown phenomenally, and those of us who grew up in the old Denver have seen a lot of changes. Notwithstanding that, people have to live somewhere, and it seems to me that it is incumbent upon us as commissioners in this county to approve of projects that fit all of the criteria and that seem to be an amenity so that our citizens have a place to live. And so in that regard, I will make this motion. In the case of P17-018, a VERE on the Highline Specific Development Plan, the county commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and the public comment as presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to the signature of the final copy of these plans, the applicant must address Public Works staff comments and concerns. 2. The applicant shall plug and abandon the existing water well on site as per Colorado Division of Water Division regulations. This shall be done prior to approval of the administrative site plan. 3. The applicant shall provide landscaping, trees and shrubs along the development's east property line to assist in screening this development from the Highline Canal Trail. 4. The applicant shall prepare a mosquito control plan. This shall be done prior to approval of the administrative site plan. 5. The applicant shall comply with the fire district's notes. 6. The applicant shall comply with the technical review committee waiver requirements in regards to the right-of-way dedication.
Motion made by Commissioner Jackson. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I will second that motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Holman. Should we do a roll call vote? Ms. Sanchez, would you please do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Jackson? Aye. Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Commissioner Conti?
No.
Commissioner Baker?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all the public comment on this. Thank you. We have a series of general business items, 2 for each of 5 fire rescue districts in the eastern portion of Arapahoe County, including the Bennett-Watkins Fire District, which has, again, both an IGA and an approval or consideration of those impact fees, the Byers Fire Protection District, the Deer Trail Fire Protection District, and Sable Aurora and Strasburg Fire Protection Districts. The attorney on this case, or on these cases, is Robert Hill, the Senior County Attorney. Mr. Hill, would you lay the foundation for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you noted, these are 5 separate requests from the 5 Eastern County Fire Protection and Rescue Districts for impact fees, and they're asking that the board adopt those fees in accordance with CRS 29-20-104.5, which is the statute granting local governments such as counties the authority to adopt impact fees, including per this request for the fire district. As you also noted, there's 2, if the board's inclined to approve these, there's 2 different motions for each district. The first one is for approval of an IGA, which sets forth the terms for the collection and remittance of the the impact fees for each fire district. And then the second item is approval of a resolution adopting those specific impact fees as described in the IGA. This matter was continued from the October 16th meeting. The board in particular wanted the districts to reach out and connect with the Home Builders Association who appeared at that meeting, as well as some of the builders who also appeared at that meeting. In addition, I understand that the fire district has brought, or we're going to bring their consultant who drafted the impact fee reports for each district and determine the amount of impact fees that would be create a nexus with the impacts of new development and determine the proportionality of those fees.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I believe we'll start with the fire districts as the applicant, and understand your consultant will be speaking on behalf of all 5 fire districts this morning. Good morning. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please. And if you do need to connect so that we can see something, then.
Magic. Good morning.
Good morning. Your name and address for the record.
My name is Emily Powell. I'm an attorney at the law firm Ireland Stapleton. Our firm is located at 717 17th Street in Denver, and we're in Suite 2800. I am legal counsel to the Sable Altura Fire Protection District, and with me here today are also Catherine Wynn with the law firm Collins, Cockrell & Cole, and Tom George with the law firm Spencer Fain. They represent the other 4 departments, but because one attorney is generally preferable to 3 attorneys speaking at a time, I've been designated the spokesman. We also have here today Molly Fitzpatrick. Molly is with BBC Research and Consulting. She is the consultant who did all 5 of the impact fee studies for the fire district. And of course, we're also joined here today by the fire chiefs themselves. We have actually a 3-part presentation for the board, if the board's amenable to receiving it. The first part of the presentation is by Earl Cumley, Fire Chief for Bennett Fire Protection District, addressing some general information regarding the need and growth in Arapahoe County and how it affects the fire protection districts. Molly is prepared to speak about the methodology and validity of the BBC studies and how those came to be prepared. And then I have prepared the last portion of the presentation to address many of the concerns that were raised by the Home Builders Association in its letter to the commissioners on October 16th, as well as some of the questions and concerns that we heard from the builders themselves at our meeting last Thursday, November 8th. So with that, I'll turn over to Chief Cumley. Chief, I don't have a clicker, so you've got to just hit the...
I have a clicker.
Okay.
I also have a letter from the
That would be given to Jolene Sanchez, and she'll make sure that we all receive that, and that it's added into the record. Good morning.
Morning. Welcome. Thank you for hearing us. Earl Cumley, Chief of Bennett Watkins Fire Protection District. 355 4th Street, Bennett, Colorado, 80102. So I'm here to talk to you guys about the fire districts. We're all located on I-70 east of 470. We provide fire emergency services, including hazmat. Currently, the districts all have 11 stations combined. We cover 1,600 square miles of Arapahoe, Adams, and Elbert County, mostly rural. But as you see, we're growing. The districts are staffed either completely by volunteers or a combination of career firefighters and volunteers. Like other government entities, such as transportation, new development with the community has significant impact on the capital needs of the fire districts. New residents, commercial space, and industrial use means new people, property to protect, which creates a load on the fire district to be able to keep up with it. The state did the CR in 2001. The CRS 2920-104.5 had allowed counties and municipalities to collect impact fees. In 2016, the legislation changed it to CRS 2920-104.5 to allow counties, municipalities, and fire districts to enter an IGA to allow the collection of impact fees in order to also offset impacts to the fire district's capital infrastructure. Larimer, Eagle, Elbert, Fremont, and Adams County are among the counties that have improved impact fees for fire districts. Fire districts' impact fees ensure that new development pays its own cost of emergency services. As you know, we don't collect any taxes on new development until the next year after they're completed. So the whole time they're being built, they're still having calls, emergency services. We have to respond to those at our cost because they haven't paid anything yet. Possible effects of allowing new growth without impact fees would be existing taxpayers must pay for the bill to service the new developments. So that's an impact on people who already live there. So it's not really fair. You know, the new developments need to pay for their own way. They're coming into the districts. They're causing the impact. They should be able to pay for their way. Service levels are reduced, resulting in slow response times, reduced ISO ratings, and increased property insurance. ISO is what the insurance company used to rate the fire departments on a number scale from the best of 1, the worst of 10. And if we don't have enough staffing, equipment, stations in proper places, your ISO rating is going to go down. One example of Bennett Fire is a 3, 4, 10, 10W. 10 and 10W is the worst. 10W means we have water. A lot of the other districts are pretty close to that, if not a little higher, because they have less staffing and less stations. But it increases your tax on your property tax, the worse the number is. Arapahoe County is growing steadily. From 2010 to 2017, the total population increased 12.4 increase. From 2010 to 2017, the number of housing units increased 5.6. From 2010 to 2016, the number of employer established increased 10.1%. So in the Bennett area is what I want to speak to because that's the biggest area in Arapahoe County in our area that is growing. Prosper Farms is going to be 5,144 acres, 8,801 residential units, 8,635,000 square feet non-resident use. And Sky Ranch has already broke ground in our district on the south side of I-70 in Arapahoe County. It's 930 acres, 4,850 resident units with 1,350,000 square feet of non-resident space. To service this developments, we need more stations, more equipment, and staffing, which in turn costs money. If we have to use our general budget to purchase new stations, new fire trucks, we're not going to have the money for staffing or for anything else because everything's so expensive. Right now, Arapahoe County currently imposes only one impact fee, the rural transportation impact fee, ranging from $1,503 to $3,118 for residential units. Although the fire district are sensitive to the fact that developers must pay other building permits and development fees, those costs are not related to fire service and do not provide funding for the fire district capital needs resulting from new growth. In order to collect only reasonable cost-based fees calculated to pursuant to the valid study, each of the fire districts retained BOCC research, a respected economic research and consulting firm in 1970. Based on the BOCC studies, fire district impact fees would increase development costs in Arapahoe County, only marginal from $679, Sable Altura, to $2,250, Deer Trail Fire Protection District, for a single-family residence. Okay, that's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chief Crumley. Are there any questions for Chief Crumley. Commissioner Sharp.
So, Chief, you said that there's no revenue, which I understand, until development or a home is built. You don't get that. Is that the same as other fire districts?
Correct.
Okay, so everybody's kind of in that same.
Move in before there.
Okay. And just another question is, could you go to the voters to ask for an increase?
We went for the voters 3 years ago and asked for an increase to build a fire station, and they denied it.
Okay.
So the second time we went for staffing and equipment, and they approved that one slightly. So for us, Bennett, to go again, probably wouldn't pass. So the normal thing you think about is try to go for them for every 10 years. So I was asked my citizens to pony up more money. I'm pretty sure it would be denied. If you look at some of the results that was in Bennett, the school district, the library, they were all voted down. So I don't think we can go back to the voters. I'd have to let the other chiefs speak about their district, but Bennett Watkins, I don't see be able to go for one and pass it.
But you could.
We could ask, correct?
Go and so this approval is not the only way that you could fund, get new development to pay its own way and that kind of thing and build what you need. I'm not saying there isn't a need. I'm just looking at from the funding perspective.
I don't think if we had to wait for the taxes to come in and the services that they're going to require, I don't know if we can wait for that. I think we got to stay on top of it to stay, response time, services. If we wait till the development gets to 500 homes, thinking they're going to pay enough taxes to buy a fire truck or a fire station, it's just not going to happen. Average fire station is $2 to $6 million, depending how big you build it. Average fire truck is anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000. And then you got to staff that station. We're a combination department, so we do career and volunteers. Our volunteers back up our career staff. So for us to be able to hire, a firefighter that costs the district $60,000 a year, our taxes don't even come close to being able to cover that.
Okay. If I could, one follow-up on Prosper. Are there going to be any fire stations on the actual Prosper property?
I think they gave us 2, 3?
2. Okay.
Lots for areas.
Okay, so you won't be paying, or the fire department won't be paying for the property, but to build on it, the capital improvements, you would have to pay for.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Holman.
Thank you. I wonder, Chief, if you can kind of elaborate the process by which you determine where those funds will go and how that decision-making process is advanced.
So impact fees go in a separate fund all by itself, and it is very limited on what you can use it for. It's capital improvement, stations, fire trucks, and stuff like that. You can't use it for payroll. You can't use it for bunker gear. It strictly says this is what you can use it, and then, pay for a fire station or pay for a fire truck. So it's real limited in what we could use. It can't augment our taxes that we get now, and it can't pay our bills. So strictly new stuff. Thank you.
I have a question. So I'm just going to kind of rephrase what I think I just heard you say, which is that if these impact fees are approved, they're not going to be used to change from being a volunteer fire department to funding full-time employees.
No, cannot be used for employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Sharp.
I have a couple of additional questions. So, what prevents you, in reading through the report and the IGA, a lot of it was negotiation with developers. So what prevents you from negotiating today with developers for some sort of impact fee based upon their impact to the fire department? Is there anything that prohibits you from doing exactly what this is being asked of us?
We can negotiate if the developer wants to buy a fire truck instead of impact fees and stuff like that. That's allowed. We're trying to keep a level playing field amongst all developers. I don't want to go to ABC and let them pay $750 and XYZ has to pay, we agree, $1,200. We want to keep it the same playing field for all developers that come to the district.
But it seems like that when you all are in a position of negotiating versus this is what it is, that you do kind of get into that, of how much can they pay? Can they pay in kind, or are they going to pay a fee, development or an impact fee? So how is that really different?
Well, it's not. We just want to make sure that for the study, BBC says, hey, this is what it takes for you to grow as a fire district. So to try to keep the impact fees what it is and only accept maybe a fire truck or some other kind of piece of equipment they want to buy. We don't really want to deviate from what the study has shown we need.
Okay. And I, yeah, go ahead.
Can I address that question from a legal perspective for you? 2920-104.5 requires the impact fees to be legislatively adopted and pursuant to a schedule. And so although negotiation is permitted by both the statute itself and by the IGA, the value of any in-kind contribution made by the developer would need to be substantially similar to the amount of a cash impact fee payment that they would make. So it's still level and still applicable to a broad class of property as required by the statute. So they're not negotiating, say, an impact fee should be $60,000 and they negotiate something substantially less because that wouldn't meet the intent of the statute.
But that could be done to meet the intent of the statute. That could be done independently. It doesn't have to be done through, as long as it meets the statute.
So fire districts still currently can and many do negotiate with developers for land primarily that they need to help offset those impacts, but it's not done under the statute, and it may not be equitable because one developer may be agreeable to doing that and another is not, which means the developers that agree to do it pay for everybody. So this is intended to help, as Chief Cumley said, level the playing field and help everybody pay their own proportionate share.
Okay.
If I can add to just relative to the donation or, for instance, land, that actually comes out of our subdivision statutes and regulations. So the fire district won't have an independent payment in lieu or donation of land provision in its code that I'm aware of, but that usually comes out of our land development process and our approval process.
Okay.
And I know we've been speaking generally about all of the fire, but if I could ask one question of Chief Crumley specifically, because you said that I had on that your current mill levy is just over 13, your mills. Was that before the last voter approved increase, or was that after? After. Okay. And do you know what it was before?
8.6.
So it went from 8.6 to 13.
0.6 to 13.
0.041 is what it looked like. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry.
I do have one. I'll make it my last one, at least at this point. So in here it states that, let's see, this is on the IGA page, top of page 2A. It says the updated impact fee schedule as defined below shall automatically be adjusted by the increase, if any, in the Denver-Boulder-Greeley Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. We have nothing, to my knowledge, in Arapahoe County that automatically increases a fee.
And I think our Molly Fitzpatrick with BBC can address the purpose of the automatic update. Certainly this is an IGA between the districts and the county, and it should work for everybody, but I do think Molly intends to address that issue in her portion of the presentation.
Well, I have to just say, from my standpoint, that's a big no. I will not support anything that has an automatic increase. We don't have an automatic increase for salaries here in the county based on CPI. I think it's a dangerous precedence, and I'm just going to go on record that I think that's
that's it's a non-starter for me.
We certainly appreciate the comment.
Comments, or should we wait for Molly to come up?
No, this is for the fire chief.
Commissioner Conti.
Yes, when you were last here, there was major concerns, obviously, from the Home Builders Association, and one of our requests was for the fire districts to go back and meet with the home builders, and I was just wondering, from your perspective, sir, when did that happen and how did it go?
It was last Tuesday? Last Thursday. We hosted it at Front Range Airport, builders and the HP staff in all 5 fire districts. We started off with a BBC study talking, and then we moved into a round circle with the builders. I'll let the HB talk about their issues, but they decided to leave. But I believe we had a really good conversation with all the builders. We were able to tell them about how we get funded, what costs the district, some of the money that we've lost through EMS revenue and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff that we brought up, they didn't know. And then they came back and talked about their issues, and we were receptive to their issues about more taxes. I believe, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but we really had a really good meeting that lasted about 2 hours. Really set the cards on the table, and everybody knew where we were coming from.
Commissioner Conti.
Just curious, did it take 3 weeks to find a date that everybody was together, or?
Yes. More so, I was waiting for the HB to help get everybody together to pick a date.
Okay.
We had, all 5 fire districts and lawyers and their side to try to find a date that we all could be there.
So I guess I'm just wondering, to wait until the Thursday before we're going to meet on Tuesday seems kind of.
Yeah, it was just a lot of emails bouncing forth. Can you do this day? No, I can't do that day. So we're trying to get everybody together.
Okay.
As a challenge.
Okay.
So that Thursday was the best we could do.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. Could you tell us what would happen if this was not approved and there was no new fees? What would happen then?
So what happened is we'd have to cover the new developments by the existing stations we have. And which I would do is possibly increase response time. If we can't build more stations to keep up with call load, stations might be on another call. We might have to call for mutual aid. If we don't have enough stations, just like Aurora, if you don't have enough stations and equipment to respond in a timely manner, then it hurts your taxpayers because it takes too long to get there. Or we might not have enough equipment. We're running 1,100 calls now out of 2 stations. So you imagine another 9,000 homes plus in Arapahoe. You also got to remember that Bennett itself has 3 developments working in phases 2 that's going to add another 1,000 plus, up to 2,000 more homes. So the call volume that could happen in the next 5 years in our district is going to be tremendous. We got to figure out a way how to cover it, how to build stations, and we know that taxpayer money doesn't give us enough money to build a $2 million station or a $6 million station or buy the fire trucks. We went for the mill levy increase basically to hire people. We realized that the volunteers can no longer hold their heads up and make calls. So we had to hire people. So we ended up hiring 6 more people the first year out of this tax money to staff both stations with a minimum of 3 each, 24/7.
Thank you. That's a question for Molly. The towns, I know we have the letter from Bennett. I believe they adopted this fee. Is that all the towns that you know of? I mean, is that Bennett for sure?
Right, the only one that has a town besides Bennett is Deer Trail.
Deer Trail. Okay. And I believe they've adopted this as well. Okay. Thank you. Continue with the presentation in the order that you had. I don't know if it's Molly coming forward.
Next up is Molly, so I'll just step over here.
Molly, if you'd state your full name and address for the record, please.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Molly Fitzpatrick. I'm with BBC Research and Consulting, and we are located at 1999 Broadway in Denver, 80202. So my presence here today is just to kind of walk through exactly how we calculated the fees for each of those districts. So I'm going to talk through that methodology. That's my focus. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on that. I'll start with kind of a brief background on who we are as well as kind of what impact fees are. I think most of you are pretty aware of impact fees and how they work, so I'll move through that pretty quickly and focus on the methodology. So we're a local policy and research firm. We do a lot of economic, public finance consulting. We've been around Denver for a long, long time. We're a local firm, pretty small firm, but we do a lot of this public finance type work. We've been doing impact fees basically since they became part of the public finance structure here in Colorado. So we've done dozens of fees across Colorado. And we, as was previously mentioned, our firm did conduct all of the fees for each of these fire districts. So it's great in that it's a very consistent methodology across the board, and so and it also allows me to answer any questions about any of those individually. So as you know, an impact fee is really a fee that's designed to help new development pay for its own way, as opposed to having existing tax base pay for that new development. Impact fees are constructed so that it allocates the burden of creating new infrastructure that's designed to serve that new development by that new development. So there are some sort of key things to emphasize about impact fees, that they apply only to new development, that it's a one-time fee, it's not a recurring fee. And that it does have to be designed in a way that reflects the proportional impact of that development. So there are specific design requirements that are set in statute as well as by Supreme Court decision that govern how that's used or how those are constructed. And then it has to be used, as Chief Cumley mentioned as well, for specific purposes that are infrastructure expansion purposes only. And so we'll talk about a little bit about what that means, but that means you can't use it for staffing, you can't use it for improvements and that kind of thing. This gives you just kind of the quick overview of all the Colorado statutes as well as the Supreme Court decisions that really govern this. Chief Cumley mentioned a couple of these as well. So I won't spend much time on these other than to say that the U.S. Supreme Court decisions they're national, the U.S. Supreme Court, are really what we use to guide how we calculate these impact fees. And so everything that we do is really informed by precedent and informed by legal precedent. So again, on the capital costs, when we're talking about impact fees, we're not just talking about broad capital improvements either. We're talking about specific capital improvements that extend the existing level of service to that new development. So you can't collect a whole bunch of impact fees and then use them to make all your facilities fancier and nicer and that sort of thing. They have to be used just to replicate the level of service that you're currently providing to that new development. And so again, when we're looking at those impact fees and when we're calculating those impact fees, we're thinking through that to make sure that we're not allocating a value that allows for or that's designed to increase level of service or just improve things or even commit any dollars to just regular repair and maintenance. So I'll move now into the actual methodologies. There's two main methodologies that are commonly used for impact fee design. And that one is current service standard, which I'll talk about, and one is capital improvement. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the current service standard, the buy-in methodology. That's what we've used for each of these districts. And that basically means that you're looking at what is currently provided in that district and then creating a ratio from that to say this is on average what the cost of existing capital service is for the district right now, and we're just going to ask new development to buy into that, so to pay the same amount that is currently reflected in the district. That's the buy-in methodology or current service standard. The other way that is sometimes used for impact fee calculations is the capital improvement or plan-based method, and that says, let's look at how much we think we're going to grow and then how much we think we have to buy to accommodate that new growth, and then the ratio for those types of impact fees is derived from that. We like to use the current service standard because we feel like it is the most true to the legislation, because it very clearly and concretely says we're going to extend the level of service that's currently being offered to new development. When you look at the capital-based method, and sometimes that's the most appropriate, but that does require you to kind of guess about future growth and guess about what you need to buy for that future growth. And so we opted for the current service standard because it more directly reflects the current value of their services. So I'll walk through that in a little bit more detail. the first step to that, so again, we're trying to get to kind of that average cost for certain development types. We begin by quantifying what the fire infrastructure is that's needed to maintain that current level of service. So what is that level of service that's currently being provided in the district? And when I say level of service there, we're really talking about what's the sort of capital investment level of service? What's the infrastructure level of service, not their ISO rating or response times and those types of things. So when we're quantifying that, we're looking at what are your assets and what's the equity in those assets that's being used to serve your current district. We then evaluate what the replacement value is. So replacement value is the terminology that's used in the statute, and that means you can't, it's not just the depreciated value of the asset, it's actually what would it cost to replace that asset. Now, we take a pretty conservative approach on that. We don't say, oh, if you have a 1980 truck, what would it cost you to buy a 2018 truck? We say, what's the value of your 1980 truck? And so we typically rely on insurance values there. So you think about it kind of as what you would get if you total your vehicle. Those are the values we use to value those infrastructure investments. The next step is to then allocate that by land use. So obviously an impact fee is assessed by land use, so residential, non-residential. And so we have to allocate that by land use. We do that either by what currently exists in your district. So by, if you're 75% of your developed square footage is residential, then we'd say 75% should be paid for by residential. So we can allocate it by that. The other way to allocate it is by calls for service. So which types of land uses put the most burden on a fire district? So that we use both of those different methodologies to see what works best. And when I say what works best, I mean which is the most accurate sort of representation of the district. Some of that depends on how much calls for service data you have or district has, how consistent that is over time. So we look at that from a statistical perspective. We then calculate the fire protection infrastructure cost per unit of development. So we take that infrastructure, the value, the replacement value, we basically divide it by those proportions to get to the land use, and then we put that on a per unit basis, so per unit of residential or per square foot for non-residential. So I realize this is kind of small on the screen. This is just a reflection of a table. This is sort of a combined version of tables that do exist that you can see a little bit more clearly in each of the fire district studies. Takes the value of the fire infrastructure across the top. It shows that land use allocation where we're saying you're 75% residential, and then allocates the cost by category. And then it shows the existing development, so the number of units and square footage within each district. And we use that to calculate those impact fees by land use. And so that's what you see at the bottom. So this is exactly how those are calculated for each district. So we typically also offer some recommendations based on our experience and based on the statute for districts. One is that the fees that we calculate reflect this full cost recovery. So what is really the full amount that it would cost you to buy the new infrastructure for that development? Districts can charge less than that, but that does create a funding gap. So if you're going to create a funding gap through that, then that has to either be compensated through other financial mechanisms, increased property taxes as was alluded earlier, or it can result in a decline in level of service, which is what Chief Cumley discussed. Impact fees by statute have to be collected through an IGA. You know that. That's why we're here. Also, as Chief Cumley mentioned, you do have to maintain that impact fee separate from general funds so that it's very transparent what is being spent and how it's being spent, and those that's only allocated to growth-related infrastructure. We recommend that the districts develop a written policy about how they're going to spend those so that that's transparent as well. And then we recommend that fees are updated annually based on inflation. So that is just to help a district keep up with the increasing costs of those infrastructure and to increase with the CPI. That is something that comes into play with the IGA and is something that you can discuss that could be negotiated in terms of the actual IGA. We recommend that partly so that a district doesn't have to do as many frequent updates on their impact fees. So the other thing we do recommend is about every 5 years, we'd say do another study to see what's happened with your impact fees. Should they go up? Should they go down? Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. It depends on what's happened in terms of development in your district. as well as what investments you've made over time.
And that may be easier for the fire departments, but I don't think that's right from a taxpayer standpoint. I'm just going to say that it's easier to just have it keep going up. But
if I'm not mistaken, it does say increase but not decrease in the IGA.
Oh, sure, and that's based on inflation. So on the increase, when I say it can go down, is when we every 5 years we say do a whole new study, do one of these impact fee studies, and see what happens if your impact fee is still where it should be. And sometimes those go down when we do them again, and sometimes those go up. That really is dependent on kind of what development is done, as well as what investments have been made in the district. But in terms of looking at inflation, so the automatic adjustment, that reads, and I'll defer to legal counsel, but that reads as going up because inflation almost never goes down.
And my question again is, did Adams County, I understand they have impact fees, and I'm wondering if they had an auto increase provision in theirs, and if the towns who have adopted these impact fees, if they have an auto increase.
I can't, Emily may know if Adams did adopt, or Catherine knows if Adams did. We did recommend that for Adams County, and so, but I'll defer. Yeah. Catherine Wynn, Represent Bennett, Byers, and Deer Trail. Short answer is yes. They had that automatic increase in their IGAs.
And that's for Adams County. Do you know about the towns?
Yes.
Both of them?
Substantially the same IGAs.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And so I just have this one last slide, which I pulled from a development study that was done by the Adams County Water and Sanitation District. So City of Commerce City was looking at some of the fees, and they put together this study. I just pulled it out because I thought it might be relevant here in that it kind of puts the fee for fire districts in the context of additional fees that are typically required of developers. So this is a study from 2016 that shows a single-family fire district fee of $1,200 would be less than 3% of all developer fees in the city of Aurora for a single-family unit, and that also reflects less than 0.5% of a $250,000 purchase price for a home. So just to put those in context, fire district fees are typically relatively small compared to all of the other fees that developers are paying. We're talking water fees, tap fees, those types of things, and other development fees. So that gives a little bit of context about kind of the magnitude of these fees in that scale. And I'm happy to take any additional questions on the methodology or anything else related to that.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned earlier that the mechanism that statute had given you to collect these fees was through an IGA, and kind of seemed to allude, if my memory serves me correctly, that was the only way that you were to collect these fees. Is that accurate?
I can address that. The statute actually requires that an IGA be adopted between the county and the fire district under this.
Okay.
Follow-up?
And that is different than a lot of other services, and I'll defer to counsel again, but that is a unique component of the legislation that crafted fire districts into the existing legislation related to impact fees. So municipalities have sort of by right to, they can enact impact fees on their own. Other city services can do that as well. Fire districts are unique in that they cannot. That's correct.
The county did when it adopted its rural transportation impact fee. We adopted those fees directly for us because the district is a separate governmental entity on its own. The IGA is required under statute.
Any other questions about how it's calculated?
It's not really a question, but if our board will recall that when we looked at the rural transportation, we did not adopt what Adams County did. We went lower.
Mm-hmm.
And that was deliberate when we compared and looked at what we don't have to do when another county does. I'm just saying, and we did not do that in the rural transportation. So I did have one other question, which Oh, are all of these developments that were referenced, and I should have asked the chief, but all of the ones in Bennett, are they all in Arapahoe County or are they in Adams?
I don't know.
For the town of Bennett,
Okay.
And to address your question on the magnitude of fees in differing counties and that sort of thing, we calculate the fee individually for each fire district. And so the fees that are for districts in Adams County are unique to those districts. The fees that we've calculated here are unique to these individual districts, which is also why each district has a different recommended fee, because that is based specifically on their level of service as well as their existing service area.
Questions? Commissioner Jackson.
And again, I'm not sure who this is for. It might be for Bob. It might be for the attorney. It might be for the chief. I don't know. But I'm wondering why we followed this process rather than having a study session and some discussions on the side around an IGA. It seems that we're kind of...
We actually did have a study session in February with the board on this topic, and
that was about a year. Okay.
Yeah, it's
been a while.
In February.
And boy, I can tell you that my memory is real foggy about what we decided or talked about in that. So okay, so that explains why we're doing this now here in this format.
Part of it was my schedule and other things, but it took that long to get IGAs negotiated and all the input necessary for the IGAs.
Yeah, I just I feel somewhat unprepared for the nuances that are embodied in this discussion. I personally, I don't have this time to say this, but I personally feel that development should pay its way, and I feel that fire protection is really, really important. And it seems to me that the discussion points here almost nuances of the IGA itself.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Any other comments? Is there any more presentation from the fire?
So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Molly.
Yes, Commissioner Baker, thank you. What I would like to do is to address some of the legal concerns regarding the IGA and the impact fees that were raised by the Home Builders Association in its October 16th letter, as well as some of the comments that we received from the builders themselves at our meeting last Thursday. So I appreciate your indulgence this morning if you can hang on to us for just a little bit longer. One issue that the fire districts felt was important when we did meet back in February is that the adoption of the impact fees or the request that the county negotiate for the adoption of impact fees was consistent with the Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan and the vision expressed in the Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan. You all know your plan far better than I do, but there's several statements in that plan referring to the desire to maintain sustainable services within Arapahoe County, particularly the desire to make sure that adequate fire protection services are provided to new development, and an express statement that the county will support districts implementing impact fees for water and sanitary sewer facilities and fire protection EMS facilities. So when we approached you all in February at that study session, it was against that background. Therefore, in accordance with those principles, the IGA was negotiated between my firm, the other attorneys, and Mr. Hill for an impact fee IGA as required by statute. The impact fee IGA, this is, of course, perhaps an 80,000-foot view, but in very general terms, it says that the county agrees to impose an impact fee on new development within the fire districts, that the impact fee will be adjusted by the increase in CPI as recommended by the district's consultant in their studies, that the fire districts will update their impact fee at least every 7 years, and will notify the county of any recommendation to increase the impact fees. If, in fact, the county does not agree that impact fees should be increased, the county has the opportunity to object to those increases, in which case they do not go into effect without the county's consent. So there is ongoing discussion and collaboration between the counties and fire districts, but there is not really the opportunity for the fire districts to increase their fees study after study without the county's involvement and agreement that they should do so. The IGA also provides an opportunity for developers to negotiate an offset for in-kind contributions. We talked about that earlier in the presentation, so I won't belabor the point. With respect to the impact fees in the IGA, we do understand that there were concerns raised from the developers, and we want to be responsive to those concerns. One of the significant concerns identified by both the HBA and the developers themselves was the cost of development and whether that causes home ownership to become unaffordable in Arapahoe County. According to the National Association of Home Builders, and it's teeny tiny on the screen, but I do have handouts if you'd like to see this. Should I hand them out now or later?
You give it to...
I'll do that at the end, if that's okay with you. You can see the website and the date that we accessed the website to get this data. But according to the National Association of Home Builders, every $1,000 increase in the price of a home, and here we are assuming that the developers will pass 100% of the cost of these impact fees through to the homeowner. Every $1,000 increase in the price of a home increases a monthly mortgage payment by $5 and increases taxes and insurance by $1. Based off of those figures, the National Home Builders Association calculations determine that the fire district impact fees sought in these IGAs would increase the monthly PITI payments, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, from between $4.08 for a resident within the Sable Altura Fire Protection District to $13.50 for a resident within Deer Trail. In addition, the impact fees proposed by each district constitutes less than 1% of the price of a new home in every district. This was somewhat difficult to tease out, but the information that we received was from Zillow.com. Again, the address is at the bottom so that you can see where we got our data. Within the town of Deer Trail, served by Deer Trail Fire, the impact fee constitutes 0.9% of the cost of a home. Within the town of Bennett, 0.5% for Bennett Fire. Within Byers Census Designated Place, 0.4% for Byers Fire. Within Strasburg Census Designated Place, 0.2% of the cost of a home for Strasburg Fire. Sable Altura has no municipalities within its district, so we used its zip code, 80018, also 0.2% for the cost of a home within Sable. A second concern that was raised is who is the appropriate party to collect these impact fees. The statute addresses the collection of impact fees somewhat obliquely, but it does so in two places. In Part 2 of the impact fee statute, it says that the local government, that's you, and the fire and emergency services provider shall enter into an intergovernmental agreement that defines the impact fee and the details of collection and remittance. So it turns it over to the IGA negotiations to discuss how collection and remittance will occur. Subparagraph D says the local government shall pay the impact fees collected to the fire and emergency services provider. I wish the legislature had been somewhat more precise in what they mean there, but when you read these two together, what it really says is that the impact fees are to be made to the fire districts, and that the details of collection and remittance can be provided in the IGA. Different counties have taken a different position on whether they would like to collect the impact fees directly or whether they do not want to have that administrative burden on their staff. And among the counties that were mentioned earlier, Elbert, Larimer, Eagle, Fremont, and Adams, most of those counties have decided they do not want the administrative burden of collecting the impact fees, which we understood to be the county's preference here. Others do collect them. But it was our understanding that that Arapahoe County did not want the burden of collecting impact fees. A very important question, and one that was discussed a lot last Thursday, November 8th, and that was alluded to during Chief Cumley's presentation, is why do we have to do this now? Why can't fire districts just continue to pay for ongoing development with existing revenue the way that they always have? And the answer is that fire districts have struggled for a long time to fund capital with existing revenues, and they've reached a breaking point. Fire districts, as you may know, receive almost all their revenue from property taxes. They cannot collect a sales tax. They cannot participate in marijuana taxes. They cannot charge for most of the services they provide other than ambulance and medical billing. Most of what they receive back for ambulance and medical billing is dictated by Medicare, Medicaid, and the insurance providers, and there is not a fire district anywhere that gets 100% back. You're lucky if you hit 40 or 45% of your medical billing on a good day. And so they're using their property taxes to fund everything, all of their capital, all of their operations, all of their personnel. And of course, operations and personnel cannot be funded with impact fees. But when impact fees are put into place, it allows the use of property taxes to fund the personnel and the operations that they need, rather than drawing from those sources to put in a new fire station or purchase the first ladder truck because a new hotel is going in, for example. Districts, like everybody, have rising operating costs. Everything costs more. You probably are all acutely aware of the conversation happening within the state regarding the Gallagher Amendment. But Gallagher mandated reductions in the residential assessment rate have acutely impacted fire protection districts because of their unique dependency on property taxes. Declining medical insurance payments, Medicare, Medicaid adjustments, etc. Fire districts are having to make service choices. If I have to put a station there, or if I have to put living facilities in a station that was never staffed before so that we can have people available to serve this new development, then I can't hire a paramedic, get new equipment in the ambulance, etc. This is a way for new development to help pay its own way so that service levels are maintained for everybody. This also goes to the question of new mill levies. Can the fire districts ask their voters to approve new mill levies or to approve capital bonds to pay for these things? Of course they can. They can always go to their voters and ask for a capital bond, and many of them do. The problem there is that's not development paying its way. That's existing businesses and existing residents paying for the new development that is coming in. And so impact fees are intended to be a more equitable allocation of those costs that new development does buy into the system that they will be serviced by, as opposed to asking the existing businesses and existing residents to do that for them. A third concern that was raised is the conferral. There is a conferral requirement in the statute. It says that the local government shall confer with any fire and emergency services provider, together with the owner or developer of a development, to assess and determine whether there should be an impact fee imposed to defray the impacts of the fire and emergency services provider. The legislature did not provide us any other direction as to what they meant by that. And so most, in fact, I believe all counties have utilized a process that is the same or substantially similar than the one that is in the IGA that is intended to meet this requirement. And that you can find in IGA paragraph 3, subsection A. It says that as part of its development permit process, the county will require the developer to meet with the district prior to the issuance of a building permit to determine whether a district impact fee is owed, and if owed, the amount of any fee. It's important to note that for some types of development, an impact fee may not be owed, and you can find those in section 4. And that's another discussion that should occur between the developer and the district, whether the proposed development is exempt. These exemptions were included in the IGA following the study session in February, when the Board of County Commissioners indicated that it would like to see the same exemptions included in this IGA as exist within the town of Bennett. And so we've brought those over. But they include things, for example, and I've had this happen in other areas, a development wiped out by wildfire or flood, and a developer comes in to rebuild. That's not a new impact. That was a development that was already being served by the fire districts, and now we're just putting it back together. So many of the exemptions you'll see are intended to address those kinds of scenarios. Also scenarios such as unoccupied outbuildings on existing property that do not create a new impact. So this is all part of the discussion that occurs with the developer and the fire districts prior to the issuance of a building permit. They also have the opportunity at this time to talk about in-kind contributions that may help the developer offset its impact fee contribution with less impact, to the developer themselves. It's been suggested that this process isn't sufficient, and in fact, what the fire districts should be required to do is to do an individual impact assessment for each and every development that occurs within its jurisdictional boundary. In our view, separate impact fee studies are not consistent with the concept of impact fees in general, and they're also not consistent with the impact fee statute, which frankly is more important from our legal perspective. But having separate impact fee studies for each and every development that goes into within a district's boundaries means that not everybody pays the fair average share of the costs. Because what BBC does, as Molly explained, when they do their studies, is they say, what is the average impact of a new development? It is true that some developments may go in that cost the district a little bit less, but it is also true that many developments will go in that cost the district a little bit more. And these impact fees are a smoothing of all of that, so everybody pays a proportionate share. If we did separate impact fee studies, the first development that would go in would probably have a fairly small impact on the district. The second development would have a little bit more, but maybe not enough to require significant contribution of capital. But the third, fourth, and fifth developments that go in have now reached a critical threshold where the last developers to develop in the district have to pay for everybody else because now there is a huge impact within the district. And we don't want that to happen. That's similar to the gifting process that's being negotiated now. Look, we need a new fire station to serve your development. Would you be willing to gift us a property? And if they say yes, that's great. But if they say no, then everybody else pays. Similarly, and as I mentioned, separate impact fee studies aren't consistent with the statute itself. The very beginning of the statute, subsection 1, says no impact fee or similar development charge, they kind of lump them together, shall be imposed except pursuant to a schedule that is legislatively adopted and generally applicable to a broad class of property. And then it discusses the substance of subsection 3 is not relevant to this portion of the discussion, but it does reference the fire district's schedule of impact fees. So that's why BBC is brought in as the expert consultant to make sure that we are getting a schedule of impact fees applicable to a broad class of property that the fire district boards of directors can legislatively adopt at a public meeting. Are there any legal questions that I can answer for the commissioners?
I see. Nobody raising their hands.
All right. Chief Cumley, of course, is still here. Molly is still here. All three of the attorneys are still here. If you have any questions for any of us, we're happy to address those. Would you like me to leave my presentation up or take it down?
I think you can go ahead and take it down. I just want to make sure that if there's anybody else from the fire districts that would like to address the Board of County Commissioners. I think your legal representatives and the consultant did a adequate job of explaining your points of view on this. So I think you should be happy with that, but I want to give you an opportunity. If not, then thank you very much, Emily and Molly. And was it Catherine as well, who gave some input into that. I do want to recognize the Home Builders Association and ask if they have a presentation or just comments that you'd like to make at this time. The board the chair recognizes Cherie Talbert from the Home Builders Association. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Cherie Talbert, HBA Metro Denver, 9033 East Easter Place, Centennial. So I I wish I knew that I had time for a presentation. I've got about 3 minutes worth, but I do have legal representation as well that would like to come up after my time is over. So good afternoon, commissioners. I'm a former debater, and this process has been a little bit tough on me because I would like nothing more than to be able to do a rebuttal to a whole lot of things that were said today. But in lieu of that, I would like to express that we did have a meeting based on last month's directive by you all, and it was difficult. It was a breakdown of communication. The attorneys representing the fire districts did not seem interested at all in our questions, our inquiries, our input. It was made very clear that they told us that they were not interested in hearing what we had to say, and we had a lot to say. The IGA before you has no changes from when you saw it originally, so nothing different has been incorporated from the last meeting. Upon further analysis, it was even more apparent in my initial letter to you all that there are significant items contained within the IGAs that are not part of this statute. This is a very misunderstood statute. These additional items added to the fire district's proposed IGAs are frankly burdensome to the fire departments. The way the IGAs are written, these fire districts will need to make land use decisions. They are firefighters. They're not land planners. Your professional planning staff should be making those decisions. Let the firefighters be firefighters. These IGAs are written, the way they're written are unnecessarily taking away a significant amount of your control as policymakers, as the permitting local government. It is clear in the provisions of the statute that the county must take the lead. Fire districts do not have authority to impose and collect impact fees. The fire districts must go through the permitting entity in consultation with the landowner and/or the developer to justify possible impact fees. Only then can that process continue on. The economic studies done on behalf of the fire districts are incomplete, and they do not go far enough. They do not compare recommendations with actual budget, nor do they differentiate between land uses in their respective zoning codes. And they do not recognize or allow for your policy recommendations, and that includes affordable, attainable housing discussions. There are viable alternatives that would be much better interests of the county, of the fire protection districts, of the landowners, and for future constituents that have not been discussed. We were prepared to discuss those, and we were not, it was not a welcoming meeting for us to do so. So, commissioners, I have copies of the statute. I have a couple copies of my original letter because I wanted Commissioner Holland to also be able to review that. And if you compare those to the IGAs that are before you, these proposed IGAs, you will see the inconsistencies that I am referencing. These IGAs are fatally flawed, and they are misleading the landowners and developers. I also have for public record an email from one of the builders that were at that meeting that you will find very interesting, that will give you more of those details. So, in conclusion, I would like to highlight there are two recommendations from your staff. One is to deny the IGAs, and the second is to deny the resolutions to adopt impact fees. We therefore respectfully ask Arapahoe County to deny the requests of the impact fees and their associated proposed IGAs and fee schedules, and to adhere to the process in accordance to the authorizing statute. So thank you, and may I provide Ms. Sanchez my
yes, please.
Copies? Thank you.
Do you have enough for all of us?
I do. Other than my letter, I only have 2 copies, and one for sure I want to.
That's fine. I think we all got that.
Okay.
I do have one question for you. As you're doing that, I'll speak slowly so you can kind of digest it. It may be your legal counsel that answers that question as well. But were you involved in any of? It sounds like a number of different county jurisdictions have approved these impact fees through IGAs. Did you, your organization, or home builders in general, provide any input to those? And is there any opinion about how those are working now?
It's a real good question, Commissioner Baker. So no, I'm going to say we have not been involved in these particular discussions on fire district protection impact fees. We are involved in numerous levels of impact fees. I can't tell you how many studies I've been involved in. That is key. I have been involved in impact fee studies across the 8 counties and 34 municipalities that we cover as the HBA. I have not been involved in any when it relates to the fire district, protection district impact fees. That is a little bit suspicious or interesting to me. I ended up finding out about this one from a little tiny ad in the I-70 Scout. Typically what happens is you have your economists who do the studies. I have always been contacted. They want the information. They want stakeholder input. And the governing bodies also want that as well. As a collective voice, as a primary stakeholder, it's incredibly important to be able to have that ability for you all to know that we've looked at it. We have, looked at every particular situation there. As we know our markets very well. We know exactly how to help calculate levels of service. We've done this. This is what we do. This is the business that we're in. So that we weren't contacted is really, in my opinion, not an oversight, but perhaps a plan.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, and thank you for being here. I think it is important to hear from you. You mentioned, and I think I caught it right, that this IGA was going to allow land use planning and decisions by the fire boards. Could you explain what land use decisions they'd be making?
So actually, I would like to hand that over, I think, to our counsel, and she can go through some of the more technical points. I think that might be more valuable to hear from a second person as well. Thank you.
Good morning. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Catherine Hildreth. I'm with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. My address is 410 17th Street, Suite 2200, Denver, Colorado 80202. And I am here as counsel for the Home Builders Association of Metro Denver. I think maybe before I answer your question, I'll go through my presentation, and then I'll circle back if I haven't still answered it. There's one other thing I wanted to point out. My cohort, Ms. Powell, mentioned that attorneys, she drafted this agreement with the contribution of the attorneys. What she was referring to is the attorneys of the other metro districts, not any attorney from the stakeholders like the developers. The developers have not had any participation other than the meeting last week, which I was not a part of, but I just wanted to point that out. I've had the opportunity to review the IGA, and I'm here to urge you to deny the IGA with instructions for your staff to renegotiate the IGA for the following reasons. 1, the IGA improperly strips the county of its inherent power to waive impact fees or accept the quality of in-kind contributions offered by a developer. 2, it gives districts enormous power to hold up development applications by failing to offer an alternative to agreement by the district. 3, it shifts collection of the impact fee from the county, where all other development fees are paid, to the district and requires consent from the district prior to issuing a building permit. And 4, the IGA lacks the statutory authority of the county to defer payment of the impact fee until issuance of the certificate of occupancy. First, this IGA shifts the discretionary authority and negotiation power from the county as contemplated in the statute to the district. Section 3A of the IGA requires the developer to confer with the district and agree before the development permit application process can move forward. The issues with this construct are twofold. One, the district, rather than the county, determines whether the development is of the type that should be subject to the impact fee. There are economic and policy reasons why the county may want to exempt a development from the impact fee. For example, Section 2920-104.5, Paragraph 5 of the Colorado Revised Statutes specifically identifies that the counties should have the right to waive the impact fees for low or moderate income housing developments. This exemption right is not contemplated in this IGA. More to the point, given that this IGA shifts all the power to the district to decide whether a development application is exempt from the impact fee, the county has no ability to waive the impact fee on a case-by-case basis for reasons to be regulated or otherwise determined by the county. Accordingly, given the important relationship between the county and development applications, the county should be in the sole authority that determines the applicability and extent of imposition of the impact fee on a development application. This IGA strips the county of that power and therefore should be denied and revised to keep the county in the driver's seat. Second, the requirement to confer does not contemplate a scenario where speed, rather than cost, is a driving factor of a development application. In certain circumstances, a developer may desire to choose to pay the impact fee outright to avoid the delays imposed by the conferral process. This IGA does not contemplate this expedited process and instead requires the conferral despite the developer's willingness to pay. Accordingly, the IGA needs to be revised to allow a payment without a conferral requirement. Third, Section 3D of the IGA shifts the collection of the impact fees from the county to the district. Nothing in the statute contemplates the shift of collection. Even my cohort, Ms. Powell, admits that the statute does not provide for the district to collect those fees. In fact, the statute specifically contemplates that the county collects the impact fees and remit those amounts to the district. In addition to being in accordance with statute, the county collection of the impact fee is more logical for the efficient processing of development applications. Developers should pay all of its fees to the county rather than having to also turn around and pay the district and then make sure the district acknowledges the payment so that the building permit can be issued as provided in the IGA. This payment construct is inconsistent with the statute and should be deleted from the IGA. Lastly, the IGA requires payment of the impact fee when building permits are issued. The statute specifically contemplates in paragraph 6 that the county should have the ability to defer collection of the impact fee until issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This IGA strips the county of that discretion. For all the foregoing reasons, the IGA should be denied and revised to address each of the foregoing issues. There are more issues with this IGA than cited here, which can all be addressed through a meaningful stakeholders process conducted by the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any of the commissioners have any questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, may I offer clarification? One thing I heard. I prepared a motion to approve and a motion to deny each of the agenda items for the IGA and the impact fees. Staff is not making a recommendation one way or another as to whether the board should or should not adopt these fees.
Thank you for that clarification. All right. I'll give one last chance to the applicant. Well, I'm going to open up for public hearing in just a second here. From the applicant to address anything that you just heard. I think you've kind of covered all of it. So, Catherine Nguyen.
I know we've been here a long time and your time is valuable, so
I'm not going to address all of the points that were raised. I think the point is the IGA was negotiated between the fire districts and your county attorney, and I always recommend that you refer to your attorney as to his recommendations on, what is legal. And so if you have concerns, I would kind of defer to him, and we are certainly happy to answer specific questions, but I don't want to go through each point.
Thank you very much. No additional questions? This is not a public hearing, but I do like to allow any public comment. If there is anyone that would like to address the Board of County Commissioners on this issue, we'll go ahead and allow you 3 minutes to come forward. The yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds left, and the red light will come on, and we'll ask you to wrap it up at that point. Please state your name and address clearly for the record. Welcome.
Tom Bradbury. Our office is out in Byers, 310 Front Street, Byers, Colorado, 80103. As I shared in front of the board last time, first of all, I mean, we all recognize what firefighters do and the importance that they have, and so certainly want to be sensitive, appreciative of what they do. I'm also sensitive of the difficult spot you guys have. Because the reality is that when you talk about how our tax situation, Gallagher, so on, no doubt there's an issue here. But the 2 or 3 points I want to make is that you guys are lumping in Bennett, Strasburg, Byers, Deer Trail all in one pot. And that's absolutely not fair to me. Because Byers, I grew up in Byers. My family's been out there since 1958. My high school class in 1982 had like 26 kids in it. The school had 125 kids. Now the high school has like 150. There hasn't been that much growth. We've been building homes out there, 45 homes in the course of about 9 years. And all 45 of those homes that we built are within 1 mile of the fire department. So I challenge everyone in this room as to whether we've created that much of an impact in terms of the servability of the fire district out there. And then so suddenly to say, because we do have another project in place that we're hoping to do duplexes, 16 duplexes. And so now it's being proposed that another $1,584 of cost just because we're going to be served by the fire district. And then on top of that, the water and sewer district saying that our tap fee is now $15,000 versus $7,000, what it was 9 years ago. Those costs add up in terms of. So my main point is that Byers is not what, the 2 projects that you mentioned that's closer to Watkins and Bennett when you're talking about thousands of homes. That's not anywhere close to being fair in terms of it just stamping on what Byers is versus the other ones. The other things that I was just gonna say is that the whole argument here that the cost just gets added on to a buyer, I couldn't disagree more. We're already at a big disadvantage out there trying to sell homes 50 miles from the metro area, and price is everything. And just saying, another $3,000 or $2,000, and it's $5 on a mortgage. No, on the 16 duplexes that we're hoping to do in the next year, I'm pretty much going to count that add-on cost is going to be absorbed by me. So take $1,584 times 16, and that's $25,000 that the builder and the developer is going to absorb. And so I disagree that just because because of the hot real estate market, so that's my point on that. So
we have one clarifying question.
Just curious, are your prices already stated in brochures or things of that nature, or why do you feel like you have the inability to increase your prices?
Through 8 years of building homes there. So we've done 45 homes, and you saw the statistic up there that I didn't disagree with, that when she quoted Strasburg versus Byers. We're 6 miles further, and so on average we're $20,000, $25,000 below them. The statistics said $10,000 below them.
So simply the market won't support it.
Yeah, if you're going farther out, you have to have a little bit more price competitiveness.
But Mr. Bradbury, you are aware that there are different impact fees being proposed for Bennett, Byers.
I just saw that the Byers one is $1,584. I didn't open up Bennett's. I didn't open up Strasburg's. I think they're distinct.
Yeah, they're all different.
Yeah. So, and I will add also, I participated in the urban growth boundary deal back that you guys did about 12 years ago. There was public meetings, there was work sessions, and we placed everything we're doing within the urban growth boundary. And so to me, that's where you were hoping to encourage development. So that's where we put it. And then suddenly then say we're an impact, I think is wrong. And then I also participated in the rural standards work sessions that Chuck did. So it's not like we've been, blind to what's happening in Arapahoe County. We've been a participant. And so anyway, I'll just add that.
Thank you, Mr. Bradbury. Are there any other citizens that would like to please come forward? State your name and address for the record. And again, keep your eye on the yellow and red light.
Commissioners, it's good to see you. Jill Rapella, 10129 Summit Viewpoint. I've been a consultant with the HBA helping them specifically with impact fees in other jurisdictions, and I was asked to take a look at this issue. I'm going to highlight two primary points. I'm going to first start with the study. The study was done as a basic calculation to determine a number. But part of where some of the frustration broke down in the meeting last week was when I was trying to raise the point that the next part of taking a study and implementing a number, determining what the right number is a policy decision. There has not been a reconciliation or an understanding by the policymakers to take a look at the fire district's budgets, their revenues, their projected revenues, the mill levy, increase in assessments, and the opportunity for bonding. That when you factor all those in for each of the districts, then you can identify an appropriate fee. That's the first thing that I want to touch on. The second thing I want to touch on is the IGA and the language in the IGA. There's so much embedded in that is more of a process. That I have worked with many IGAs, many land use, many impact fees, many districts. When you embed a process in an IGA, it creates future problems, and it locks people into a level of needing to comply versus having an opportunity for other better solutions. I would say that there's some language in the IGA that's concerning, and most importantly that the statute allows for or other development charges, or cannot charge the impact fee if the landowner voluntarily offers other fees or other opportunities. I would recommend to you not approve the IGA. Take the time to look at the studies, to take a look at the budgets, and determine what the appropriate fee is from a policy standpoint. And then I would take the opportunity to streamline an IGA, very simple, and keep it only consistent with the statute that determines what the fee is and that you're going to be collecting it and remitting it to the districts. And then make a reference to your regulations, your land use regulations, which is where the embedded process could be. They could include a subdivision agreement that might create a better solution on behalf of the fire districts. These burdens on land use decisions and determining permits should not be put on the fire districts. It's the process within your land use approval regulations. That's all I have. I won't repeat anything else that's already been said.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments? Any citizen comments? All right. I will. We'll go ahead. Are there any discussion questions among commissioners? I just want to say that we did attend last week at the Colorado Counties Incorporated a very long meeting to discuss Gallagher and its impacts. And I believe the state recognizes that when I say the state, the state legislature does recognize the impact that Gallagher has specifically on fire districts and on school districts. That was one of the proposed changes, specifically how Gallagher affects the fire districts. So I do think that is being looked at. They're looking at solution to that. This is my area, and I believe that the fire districts are having to do more with less. That's been clear over the last few years. My weighing of this matter has to deal with, is this the right method? Is this the right solution to the problem? And it's a very tough decision. Are there any other commissioner comments? I would entertain a motion.
I am really tempted to deny at this point. because I have so many problems with this IGA. So I would defer to the board if we want to continue to work on this IGA, as some of the suggestions have been made that it could be. But I am not happy with this IGA, and just because it's been done someplace else doesn't carry any weight with me at all. I want to do what's best for Arapahoe County, and I don't live in Adams County, and so if we think that this IGA could be pared down, I am very concerned. As I said, I don't like the CPI increase at all. I will never support that. And I think some of the conferral process I went through and circled a lot of things in here and made quite a number of notes that I didn't even mention today throughout the IGA. So I would kind of like to hear from my fellow commissioners if they think that we can make this something that Arapahoe County maintains, we and our board maintains the ability to make land use decisions. I think this does take away a lot of that authority from the county, and I would not support that. So,
Commissioner Holman.
I agree with the commissioner's statement. I think that what we really need to do is that I think we were brought into this process late. We really didn't have the time nor the information that was presented today about some of the objections. I would prefer that if we would just table this issue and go back and take a look at have a more positive and transparent process where we can begin to look at some of the issues that have been brought forward today, and maybe strengthen or loosen some of the provisions of the IGA. That'd be my recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Holman. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I really do believe that the fire districts do need some help with their capital and preparing for development. I think it's very wise of them to be looking forward to all of the changes in the eastern part of the county. But given all the questions on the IGA, and I think the comment of, one of the latter attorneys who said we need to listen to our attorneys, I think we need further study. So I'm not sure whether it's better to deny the motion and then rehear it in some other way, or to postpone the decision until such time we can revise the IGA. That would be my preference. But I'm not sure which is the better way to do it.
Mr. Hill, would you, what are our options here? I know that we can continue indefinitely. Is that one of the options? Or we can deny?
Essentially, yes. This is not a quasi-judicial determination of the board, so it's not subject to all those rules. It's really legislative action of the board. So you can continue it with direction to relative to concerns on the IGA, maybe come back with a new IGA. You could deny it with that same direction. I think we can address, for sake of brevity, you could probably address all the requests, all 5 fire districts with the same motion. I would assume we'd want to treat them similarly. So, but in tables, an option 2, table strictly under Robert's rules. It takes a motion to put something on the table, but also takes a motion to take it off the table. So that's a third option.
Well, rather than seeing it be denied outright, I will go ahead and make the motion that we table it at this time with the intent of scheduling a study session or interim meetings as much as possible to try to come to some type of agreement that we can all find acceptable. Commissioner Sharp.
And I would be okay with that, but I really do think that we need to have stakeholders. I want to address all the legal issues that were presented here today and by our attorney, and have and to hear that myself. And I would also, like to go back a little bit in this process of, everybody talks about transparency, but I think it's inclusion of the people that are going to be most impacted by this, by any IGA. And so I want to make sure that all the parties, I know we've done that on numerous occasions with all kinds of things and I think that's the right way to bring the interested and parties who have a stake in this together to hear their ideas. And I think that was something that was not done. I'm disappointed that it wasn't done initially. And I'm also disappointed that the meeting last week didn't seem to be receptive to that. So I think we need a little bit more direction, let me just say that must be done, and that everybody's going to be heard, and their points of view are going to be respected and not dismissed. I'm not saying that the fire department and all of you all, the good work that you do all the time, and absolutely, I mean, I see it in all the things. I mean, we just had the hearing out at the fairgrounds about the Swan Wells out there, and how important it is to be able to, from the standpoint of oil and gas, to be able to address issues. So I'm not saying I don't support you all. I'm just trying to figure out how we do this, respecting all the parties, what you need, what we also need in the county. So I will second that motion, and let's put together a good plan for how we get continued input from you all, what it is that you need, as well as home builders and the HBA, as well as home builders themselves.
And I will say that I think after the study session that we had in February, it was really the onus was placed on our legal staff to do this, whereas I'm thinking that maybe the Public Works Planning division might be the better, rather than attorney to attorney, or from fire districts to constituents and home builders, that maybe the planning department would be the best entity. But I'm willing to consider other departmental, other county staff being involved in that. But I think that that's something that,
if I could, I think whoever we need to have at the table that would be appropriate is fine. I think that there are also there have been some cities that have adopted have gone through this issue and done some planning around this. I would like to know what they've done to come up with a solution that helps their fire districts or district, as well as their town's needs and development, encouraging development as well, and not pricing at. We already know that our housing prices certainly in the metro area
And I'm including even going out the I-70 corridor. We're seeing more and more have just reached a breaking point. And I think to be able to go out to some of these areas means that people can't, they're going to drive further, but they can afford that house. They can afford that home ownership. And I don't want to take that away from somebody.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Holman.
As a former volunteer fireman, I know how difficult it is to be able to struggle with inadequate equipment and a volunteer fire department. On the other hand, I think it's important that we realize that policy decisions really have to come from this side of the table, because we have a tremendous amount of involvement in land use decisions, in providing adequate transportation for these new developments. Yet at the same time, we understand and are very sympathetic to the needs that our fire departments have. So I think this is the best way for us to sit down at the table and resolve these issues and provide the necessary and adequate funding that the fire districts need to protect our citizens.
So a motion has been made by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Sharp. Ms. Sanchez, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Jackson? Yes. Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp? Yes. Commissioner Conti?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Motion carries. So thank you, everyone, for all of your work on this. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we can get there. We appreciate everybody's input. We have no other general business items. Are there any commissioner comments this morning? Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I just want to thank the citizens of my district and Arapahoe County for re-electing me to my third term. I'm very grateful, and I look forward to the next years in doing my best to serve my constituents and the citizens of Arapahoe County. So thank you, everybody.
Congratulations to both of you. Commissioner Hogan.
Well, we still have some firemen here. I want to acknowledge our friends in California who are suffering tremendously over these major fires, and thank you for your services. And our hearts and prayers go out to those families who have been impacted significantly by these outrageous and dangerous fires. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to throw a shout out to the Arapahoe High School boys 5A soccer team. Congratulations on winning a state championship. Just know that we are all thinking of you and very proud of you guys. So way to go.
And our attorney's son scored the winning goal. So,
thank you. Any other comments? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a marathon session.